Good morning, Amsterdam, Workspaces and People, Season 2. We are at Sohouse in Amsterdam and we're meeting with Januska, which was a very last-minute introduction. I don't know what to expect. I know she has a very interesting vita.
So the first thing we did was take out all the walls in between. This is where the musical heart of Amsterdam is ticking. That's this place, and we're a part of that.
The more free you are to move around, the more creative you get.
Workspaces and People Season 2 here on YouTube.
Season 2, People and Workspaces Amsterdam. Was? Workspaces and People? Workspaces and People. We have a running gag because I never get the things like here and subscribe here, and I never get it right.
Okay.
Anyway.
Point the right corners.
Yeah, I just want to make a quick introduction because yes, this is Workspaces and People, Season 2 from Amsterdam. Thank you so much for making time,
Of course.
Januska.
Thank you.
Pete introduced us very spontaneously.
Yeah.
Let's repeat a little bit about who you are, where you come from, and what drives you.
Yeah, totally. So I was born and raised in Rotterdam. My parents are from Suriname, this little former Dutch colony. I'm an industrial design engineer from background, studied in Delft here in the Netherlands. Always had this craving to go abroad and see the world. And at one point after my master's, I joined like a bigger corporation because I always wanted to learn how to make more impact. Not that you get that back from the corporation, but like they knew how to sort of like grow things to a bigger extent. And then when I was working for this big corporation, I was placed in Kenya. And that is how I arrived there about 6 years ago. Started this strategic design and communications agency to help Fortune 500 companies with growth based on insights on the ground. And then 3 years into my journey over there, I wanted to give something back, also a little bit more with my industrial design hat on. So I started this social enterprise where we basically created design furniture with local carpenters, trained them, and also like allowed them to sell their products to a channel of the expat and B2B market in Kenya. So we basically provided work to them on the ground.
You also did interior design before, was that?
Yeah, so I graduated between architecture and industrial design engineering. And I graduated on the topic of like how consumers actually experience space. And within that, like I researched all sorts of like basic motivations, like, you know, the Maslow pyramid explains a lot about like people's behaviors, drives, but also like from a fundamental physical perspective until like a self-sufficient sort of like perspective.
Okay.
And also like did a lot of research on like psychological drivers of what makes a space a great space. Right?
We have just talked about that so much already.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But
So,
it's a fascinating topic because like especially what we said as well, like on the changing environment in the world, you know, like with these new technologies and stuff like that, like what will space contribute to people, and like how will that space evolve, right? And I find it a fascinating area to see, like, if space, is that still something architectural, like are we still talking about like walls, or are we sort of like evolving from that human experience and shift to another space?
what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's interesting with all these technological developments. Like I always perceive it from this macro level and this micro level. So the macro level is very much on like new technology, how labor will change because of influences like artificial intelligence, how work will change, like if robots are gonna learn, sort of like take our jobs, and what is left there for the human experience. And so like in a space of cognition and mindfulness and sort of like really getting closer to yourself as a human and remembering that you're a human instead of a human that is like chipped up with like all sorts of robotic things. I think there's an amazing opportunity for us as humans to look inwardly and understand what is going to happen like when we are living in a fully automized world. And then on that sort of like micro level, like what is needed for humans to still feel that human experience, right? And how that future will influence that. So I think that's a fascinating space. Yeah.
What is needed in your eyes?
Yeah, I think so. We spoke a little bit about Buddhism as well. So I've been researching over the last 4 years a lot of mindfulness and Buddhism and also like feeling things because I'm a highly sensitive person. And what I feel is that there's so many external input, and obviously like we speak about it on the level of like, oh, we're being distracted because of social media and stuff like that. But I think fundamentally, like, it is never taught in no schools or whatsoever, like how to feel human or be human, right? So we have all these sort of like layers that we put on top of ourselves. Like you have to get a good job and then you're like a human, or you have to look good and then you're a beautiful female, or you're a beautiful male, or you can be successful. You know, like you have sort of like put on all these layers, and nobody teaches you from like being a child. And this is why we always have like these childhood issues, right? And then we have to go to the psychotherapist to sort of like address that, which I think is also fascinating. But I'm like interested in how can you nurture the child in the beginning to really stay closer to their own personal human experience, and how you can, for example, like facilitate with exercises of like feeling and thinking, and to really nurture that experience from a very young age, so that later in life, like you don't have to put in a lot of effort to peel off all these layers of status, ego, and whatnot, which is a super, super hard exercise to do that later in your life. And then if I fast forward to a life where artificial intelligence and robotics have taken over, you know, like if you have to fight through your own experience and, you know, owning that human experience when everything is optimized, it's going to be even like harder. So I think there is a great responsibility for anything around education that is not traditional, but that is very much about like educating kids how to sort of like be their own human experience.
I
Sorry,
don't
it's a
know.
lot.
I don't know. I'm like, okay, I have to take this in for a moment. No, but that is so. I mean, I'm always trying to find words, and this is exactly what I feel inside, that we are taught a lot of things.
Yeah.
I was taught Latin and mathematics and everything at school, whereas the important things, relationships, taking care of each other, trusting each other, those things, a lot of people are not taught in this. A lot of people, I mean, our parents work, there's no community as in a tribe or something that we grow up, because we're very individual. We live very individually, I would say that. So have you come across people raising children, teaching them these kind of things? Where was that, and what was your experience?
Yeah, I'll give you it's more sort of inspiration. Like I wouldn't say that there is like a direct sort of like way of where I saw people or parents educating kids in a certain way where it was effective. But I will give you a story on Kenya, right? So like when I was building this design furniture brand, it was interesting because you have the older generation. These are like 40-ish-year-old, late 30s, like maybe more mid-40s, and they really experience like the post-colonial sort of like stress, right? So they live for the day. So it was like, I just want to get the most money for whatever furniture you let me make, right? And then you had these younger kids, like I would say from 17, 18, and they would just like try to figure out what we were trying to teach them, right? They were so excited by the skills they were learning, because we were just talking to them, like, what do you want to do? You know, like, why do you want to be in carpentry? Like, is it only to make money, or is it to learn something? And the learning aspect was so big for them. And in that learning aspect, where there is another human that is actually dedicated to really sort of like interact and want to sort of like leverage them, that was the most beautiful thing. So what happened then is that like they would tell their friend, another 17, 18, 19-year-old kid, you know, and that would then come and say, hey, can I also make this furniture?
So it has like a ripple effect?
So it has a ripple effect. And then before we knew, because I also didn't know that, you know, like I just wanted to help one carpenter. My first carpenter was this older guy, you know, like, and so he had like this nephew and stuff like that. And then this whole sort of like tribe of younger guys sort of came together, and they all wanted to learn. And before I knew it wasn't about only making money. And obviously they saw that we were selling more and there were other challenges over there. But like it was a lot more about learning and coming together to make furniture. And I think like the root of that really sat in sort of like another human that comes in and says, I actually care about what you are or what you can be as a person. And I think like in a general traditional educational system, what we see is that this person comes in as a teacher, whether like a kind person or an unkind person, but it's very much top down. It's very much about like, so I have this curriculum with mathematics, Latin and whatnot, and then I'm gonna bring it to you and then you sort yourself out, right? Whereas I think if you really listen first, then you give this person a platform to raise out of that and respond from their own inner sort of like drive. But yeah, it's hard. Like it takes a great dose of like empathetic, you know, like skills.
Putting the ego aside, which we see a lot in workspaces also,
Yeah.
when spaces are just designed that way.
Yeah.
Actually, you come in when you're new and
Yeah.
you're like here, and then
Yeah.
you make your way up,
Yeah.
so to speak. That's really that's a problem.
Yeah, it is a problem, and but I find it interesting as well because I also see there's an opportunity right now. You know, like in this space, and I was reading this book, the 21st Lessons of the 21st Century, Yuval Harari, and it was all about like in the space of you know, like automation and losing all these jobs, like. It is an opportunity as well, at least that is what I took out of it, is an opportunity for us to sort of like recreate what we then define as work, right? And I think because of all these rapid technologies, like things are moving so fast that we actually don't take a moment where we have the opportunity right now to say, let's just think about it and say, how can we sort of like create this new way of working, right? So I think it takes a couple of like really bold people that make noise, like yourself, about this topic, and curate it, because I haven't seen many good examples of like what would be the alternative if the whole world is automated and human jobs are not necessary anymore. You know what I mean?
So you came back
A year ago.
so
Yeah.
very recently.
Yeah.
What is your mission that you taking on from Kenya
Yeah.
here?
No, it's a very good question. So obviously, like I didn't sort of, you know, like made the choice overnight to come back. But one of the things, like for me, you know, like, and it sounds such a millennial kind of like thing, right? I want to make impact, but it's always been like this for me. So I said my life is very valuable. Like since I was young, like I was confronted with the fact that life is very precious. Like you can die young, you can, you know, like everything can happen. And so what I found precious is to sort of like look at life and see how you can contribute the most, right? And so that is, I think, what fundamentally also brought me to Kenya, to sort of contribute the most, because I saw that as a place where there is a blank canvas to still do things and to contribute. But so after 5 years in Kenya, I saw the world changing like very quickly. So all these sort of, even Instagram, for example, like wasn't there 5-6 years ago. Social media and the whole influencer marketing thing.
Now we have
happened.
TikTok. I learned.
TikTok is this a new
yesterday.
thing?
I was trying to look into it. I didn't get it. But
Really?
Also, then MP, who's like 15 years younger than me, said
It's
he
like,
didn't get it. So
really?
I'm like, oh, okay.
I don't even know what TikTok is. Like, this is crazy. But so we have all these things, and like over the last 5-6 years, things changed so quickly. I mean, like we're still talking about artificial intelligence, and still nobody really understands what it's gonna be, what effect it's going to have on society. But people are talking about it. And on the lower level, for example, your Gmail is already making recommendations on what word you should type next and stuff like that. That's all artificial intelligence. So it's like slowly and silently moving into our lives without us knowing, right? So when I saw that happening from a distance rather, because we work for very big international brands, so we saw the developments over here as well, I thought I have to go back and sort of absorb some of that sort of new technology to also understand like how I can still protect, you know, that human development and make impact while understanding these new technologies. Because if I don't understand like all these rapid technologies, like I would be lost. And I saw that as a risk. So this is why I said, okay, I can either stay in Kenya or in Africa for the rest of my life and try to impact here locally, which would have been perfectly fine. But like if you really want to scale up, I think it's important to sort of like also understand what is happening in the rest of the world. And from that understanding, apply it to how you can sort of contribute and make more impact. So that is what brought me here. and still sort of like kept the head on how can I sort of like impact in a scalable way. And I identified that a lot of governmental institutions and public institutions actually have the capability, although maybe sometimes they don't.
Which you work for a lot right now.
Exactly.
You said that before.
So basically we help governmental institutions and public institutions to innovate. And so for them to stay relevant and also for them to contribute to society, to the world, to politics, to the economy, like they have the authority and the institution to make that contribution. But at the same time, there are like also organizations that have not done anything with innovation over the last years. So technologies are basically sort of like racing against them and they're like, oh, what is happening? At the same time, they have this power to impact society. So this is why I thought, you know, like if I educate myself fairly quickly, because that is what you do as an industrial engineer, you sort of like absorb information, you digest it, and then you sort of like apply it to make some sort of dent in society or for a product or for a service. And so basically what happened is that I said, that's a way to impact as well. And then I'm still sort of like contributing, but I'm doing it here in the Western world. And it's still for me like part of this like, similar mission. And from here onwards, I'm also looking into other sort of like not-for-profits and public institutions like a World Food Program that has this amazing mission, you know, to diminish hunger in the world. To work with such parties so that we can actually scale the impact instead of just trying to help like a few carpenters. And I know like this world is all about scalability, and you know, like you have the Facebooks and whatever, like the big new corporations that are all talking about scalability. But I think it's time to really scale impact. And I see very, very little organizations or consultants or parties doing that in a proper way, where there isn't like a very big for-profit driver. So there I also think that there is a sort of new wave coming and a new responsibility, and this is just a feeling, right? Of these people, again like yourself, but that are sort of feeling that something is shifting in the world, and that are being responsible or holding themselves responsible to curate what that future human experience then is. And I hold myself accountable for that as well. So I know it sounds a little bit fake still, but there is, I think, a force needed as big as the force of the technological monopoly right now that is going to help to counter that very unhuman experience, or the development of that unhuman experience.
How fast? I mean, it's just a super strong mission. I think it sounds absolutely amazing. How? Sometimes I get the feeling. So I can only say about Germany, because that's where I live, where I spend most of my time and energy and focus. When it comes to governments, it seems, and governmental organizations, it seems very hard to not have an impact maybe, but it's like almost like a big tanker boat, you know, you can't just pull the brakes and stop and turn the direction.
Totally.
How is it here? Sometimes I get the feeling the Dutch or in general things. So I lived here 10 years ago, and I come very often, and every time I find major things have changed. Like, let's say, for example, little things like the subway system is so easy, right? It's so fast, and you know, things are changed like super. I mean, this is very much on the outside, but how is it to push things like?
It's interesting. It's an interesting topic that you touched there, because the Dutch are extremely progressive. Because when I talk to my friends, whether it's in Kenya or in the States or whatnot, and I explain that we help them, these governmental institutions, innovate, they're like, where in the world do you see a governmental institution to be open to innovation and also so open to things like artificial intelligence, blockchain technology and stuff like that? So I think, for one, the Dutch are very progressive. And then for two, on your question, you know, like, can you shift the machine? It all comes down to sort of like two things. Like, first, you have to install innovative behavior. Because if people, like within an organization, whether it's corporate, whether it's a startup, or whether it's a governmental institution, if they're not open to innovate and
Learn and grow.
exactly rapidly, and if they're not comfortable with like trying and failing, which is like very much fundamental to innovation, you can pull in all sorts of like programs, but the machine will not shift. So this is what we always say, like we first sort of like train you guys to learn how to behave in a more innovative way. And what you see, like when you do that properly, like it may take some time, but when you do that properly, like it becomes easier in the midterm and in the long term to really shift the machine. And that's again sort of like it's approaching the machine like a human, right? It's sort of, you also go to school like from your 3-4-year-olds until, and then you learn all these basic things, right? And then from then onwards, whatever you then absorb, like from your 12, 16, whatever, you get accelerated. And so this is how I look at the governmental or like this big thing. Like you first have to train them and nurture them into this different type of behavior, and then help them guide with inputting creative energy, like crazy people, radical innovation, so that you can sort of like step by step shift. I always, when I was younger, said, "Oh, why are these organizations not shifting quickly? Why can't they just operate like a startup or whatnot?" But I think with every major shift, maybe apart from the rapid technological shift right now over the last 5 years or 7 years, it takes time. It takes time to change culture. It takes time to change behavior. Like it takes a lot of time to change perception. So the number one, I think, skill there is patience. Which is also like rooted in a lot of Buddhism, of course.
It always takes patience and time to grow good things. How do you say? Make the not make the tree and the leaves, but to make the ground.
Yeah, and this is why I was fascinated by your story about your friend. That says I have a 300-year plan.
Yeah, Dandapani.
Exactly. I mean, it's amazing because it's like, if you understand as a human that things are not going to happen like in 2, 3, or 10 years. It's a fact. We can't go around that. And so I think it's fascinating, like if you can plan. And this is why I think like we need more people like that to counter this whole sort of rapid, unhuman and sort of, I don't know how to call it. It is a sort of like artificial way of like how we're moving into or how we're pushing the world forward, right? So we need more people like that to counter.
How do we create that kind of, we were talking about community, tribe, people gathering.
Meditation. No, it's interesting. I think, I'll give you an example. So for me, so I was born and raised in Holland. Like I feel very Dutch, but obviously, like I don't look Dutch, and I have like this different background, and I've lived abroad for a very long time. So they call this concept like this third culture kid, which I also didn't know the word of. And I think these are like type of people that are open to many different cultures. Mm-hmm. And I've met quite a bunch of like these people in the world. But they have the opportunity to bring their skills together and really sort of like, because the vision is very bold often. So if you've lived in many places, you're open to a lot of people, like you're skilled in a certain way, like somehow you have the power to make a change. But these people find it hard to find each other, right? So I also thought like maybe there is a way to bring these people together. I don't know how or something. And when you, for example, look at something like Sohouse, I think they did it in a very well way where they said we pick a particular niche, like the creative industries. And in general, like very evident for the creative industry is that people are very open and open to other people and wanting to learn and sort of like wanting to interact and see what they can do. Like in general, the creative industry works like that. Like people want to collaborate to sort of like grow bigger. And I think what they did very well, like despite the fact that it's, like molded in this sort of like membership model, is that in every city they pick like this core group of people where they say, okay, like you guys are the founders of the Sohouse, of this community, and you bring in like other people to come and enjoy our programming or whatnot. You don't have to become a member like directly, but sort of like attract that right crowd. So I think to really change the world and make a dent in society, I think there should be some sort of like entity or some sort of like fundamental community of impact makers that say, okay, and now through our networks that are substantial, we're gonna sort of like make this dent. And I don't know like what is really necessary for that, whether it's a space or whether it's a new way of like connecting to humans all over the world, where I don't know, maybe you need to pick a certain topic. Like for example, it's just an idea, but this is going to happen. In October, it's going to be my 35th birthday, and so I said for my 35th birthday, I want to do something back, or give something back to the world. So we're going to go to Cape Town and have like this amazing sort of summit series, kind of like cool experience, where we fly in like all these like amazing artists and stuff like that, like have cool local like cooking sessions and whatnot. But me and my business partner are going to facilitate a couple of design thinking sessions as well.
Nice.
To solve a topic, a world pressing topic, and I chose malnutrition. It's in the first 5 years of a child, like if they don't sort of like get fed properly or have a diverse nutritional palate, they can develop stunting brains. So even if they go to like this really, really renowned business school when they're like
What is
22,
stunting brains?
basically brains that don't develop any further.
Right.
So it doesn't matter like what kind of information or top-notch schooling you give that kid like later on in life. If their brains got stunted, they can basically not develop that anymore, and also not contribute to economy or to the country or to themselves in a certain way, or to their families, which I find like fascinating and very valuable to dig into. So when I was telling my friends that some of them are amazing sort of like thinkers, some of them are amazing creatives, and I was like, let's bring that together and all think about these topics like over a course of like a day. And then for the winning sort of like concept, I will do a fundraiser on my birthday. And I want this to be like a really cool thing, that I'm not the only one doing that for the birthday, but like that everybody can do that for their birthday, right? So I think like if we install these creative concepts.
I'm turning 35 in 1 year.
Here we
so
go. Please
I'll
do
do
it too. It's awesome, you know?
I'll do it.
And I think in the world of all this virality around YouTube and whatnot, like if we document this properly, like this is, I think, how you can campaign for impact and how you can then
because
also
if
track.
you to quote MP, if you don't have it on camera, it didn't happen.
Exactly.
It didn't happen.
It doesn't exist, right? And I think this is also beautiful, because we complain a lot about like all these, like rapid technological developments, but like a small sort of sustainable brand that has this amazing footprint, like can now sort of like give their product to a massive platform. So I think like if there is a better time to plug in like impactful purposeful project, it's right now. So yeah, it's epic as well. And we need to use that opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
for sharing your thoughts. I have like a million
no,
questions
sorry.
in mind. I have a million questions in mind. One was, how do we, because now we're talking about valuable communities and tribe sending out a message.
Yeah.
And you were bringing up the Sohouse, which is super nice. It was a very good energy up there.
Yeah.
We just met there.
Yeah.
It's very calm. You get you immediately feel connected to the people, although I'm not a member. You brought us in. Do you still need spaces in forms of walls today? Can we create the space differently? What is your... What do you think?
My
what do you
opinion
feel
is
about it?
It's a good question. I think my opinion or my feeling is a little bit twofold, right? So I'm a great lover of beautiful spaces as well. I think there is something when you're a visually enticed person, you sort of like want to get like these impulses of like beautiful spaces that are orchestrated in a particular way where you then feel good or whatnot. I also think that the space, whether it's the corridor, whether it's a particular meeting spot, is allowing you to make connections. For example, like the other day, like I was in the gym, and this was New Year's Day. And I came in for my New Year's Day workout, and there was someone else that also came in for
Do you
New
also
Year's Day.
work out the other 364 days?
No,
or do you
only the first day. I'm like, I did it. I got it done. Yeah, exactly. So I was very proud of myself that I did. But I came in, and a lady started to talk, and she was very open, and she was sort of like reflecting on her sort of first day of the year workout as well. And she was like, oh, we really need to get, like take care of our bodies and stuff like that. And for me, it was so easy because it was the corridor of the changing room, and it was then so easy for me to respond. So that is what a physical space still does, right? Because it's sort of like, it creates this platform that I can react if that other person is okay with it. And under the sort of like umbrella of this membership club, where a lot of people are from or the majority of the people are from the creative industry, you sort of like know that the barrier for you to interact is lowered. And that is what I liked about that particular interaction.
So the trust is higher.
The trust is there, and I think, especially in Holland, it's not really. People always think that Dutch people are very open and tolerant, and I think that is very true to a certain extent. But in terms of like relating like this, it's very individualistic, like, I mean, like if you have dinner with particular friends, like it's very hard to invite other friends in, like it's not a common thing, and especially not last minute, for example. So this is very funny. But I think the opportunity there is still for spaces to lean themselves to sort of like create that platform for interaction. The other thing that Sohouse, for example, does is their programming is very, very good. And their programming is in such a way that it's all about fashion, it's about music, it's about entertainment, all these things that, again, resonate with the tribe as well, and the community as well. So when you're going to one of these events, like whenever there's a good concert in Paradiso, the day before there is this like living room sort of like concert, and you immediately, like you enjoy the same music, and because of the fact that it's such a small space, because it's really tiny, like there's a tiny sort of like stage, and that is where the artist is, you can't get around not interacting with each other. So I think there is still a big responsibility for these curated spaces that design interaction. And then the element of trust, and lowering the barriers for people to be human, because fundamentally, again, like if we look at the Maslow pyramid, like we all want to belong. It's just one of our fundamental needs, right? I think that trust barrier is something that needs to be lowered, but also like I think that first moment of interaction is always the most exciting or sort of like nerve-wracking thing. Because there's a lot of ego in that sort of like nervousness, right? It's like, this is my opinion, but it's like, what will this person think of me when I just say hi or whatnot? And that's especially something here in Holland, when I came back from Kenya. Like I was greeting everybody on the street, and at one point I was like, everybody's looking at me funny because this is what I used to do in Kenya, and everybody says hi and hi, right? I perceive that as a lowering of the ego, where we say, I'm human, you're human. Like if I say hi and I say, how are you? Then, that's fine. It has nothing to do with like who I am, what I want from you, or how I present myself, or that we need to do business or whatnot. And it would be interesting to understand, like apart from the space and what the design of the space can do to create a human interaction, how humans can learn to lower that first barrier of ego. And obviously our traditional school system and our traditional world has taught us to put on all these layers of like status, like if you look good, like what we just said. So I think the first sort of like peeling off is just to sort of like lower that ego or egotistical.
Which is funny because we just went to B building yesterday,
Yeah.
and I made one post and it says on Instagram, "Remove the ego," because it was a big sign hanging there in one room. ego.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. I mean,
Yeah.
I have a big ego myself,
We
right?
all have
I'm,
egos.
I'm trying to at least feel it when
Yeah.
it, when it's there.
Yeah, and it's nurtured.
yeah.
I mean, it's nurtured throughout our whole lives.
I try to not let it take over.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah.
we all have it, and it's also
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we just need to maybe, but that's my personal point of view. But maybe accept that it's there
Yeah.
because it's a part.
Yeah.
My ego is a part of me. So there's always good and bad parts. But the moment I see, okay, it's my ego reacting.
Yeah, exactly.
I can handle it a
Yeah.
little bit better, and
Yeah.
I can step a bit backward and be like, okay, should my ego react, or maybe the other
Exactly.
part? So,
yeah. And it's interesting because like in Buddhism, like there's so much around the ego, but like some things that I read as well that I found interesting is that your ego can also help you. I mean, like we don't live, in a monastery like here in Amsterdam, and we don't live in this absolute sort of like space. So we need to interact and
So
react.
ego is also something you protects you.
Exactly. It helps you navigate through life because we live in a capitalistic system, like we can try to find it or fight it or balance it or sort of like, like reinvent it maybe, but it's happening. So it's also helping you to sort of like navigate through life and maybe also like create things for yourself, like, have a family that is healthy and that is happy. I mean, like it comes from things like work and life and being happy, and you need sometimes your ego to, position yourself in a certain way so that you can do good work or that you can, like support your kids and your family and pay the bills or whatnot. But I think there's another part in that, with sort of like choosing not to allow your ego too much, where your ego becomes, like a misrepresentation of yourself. And that is something that is very artificial for me then, because it's not authentic. It's not, like an extension of your human experience. It then becomes something like, oh, there's just a walking human, but there is a layer of status on it, and that says, I do this particular job in this investment bank, so I can treat people that are working here in a bad way. And I think that is taking out of the human experience, but that is also being nurtured in a capitalistic world, right? So I think there needs to be space made for that investment banker to say that it's okay for him to just be a kind human. And if you ask me the question like how can you do that?
How can you do that?
I'm reading your questions. It's practice. It's role models, and it's mentors. And it is so cliche, but like if he has a boss that he looks up to with a great family, because again we're humans, like we're little sort of belonging in this little bodies. We all want to sort of like look alike, and we see a successful investment banker that is also kind to his family and also kind to other people and lives a good life in his particular financial sort of like industry, but at the same time is a good human. Like that person will inspire that other person. So we need more role models to ripple effect.
How can we follow, how can our subscribers follow you on your birthday coming up, and
that's a super
sharing
good question.
the message?
Yes.
Like how are we gonna get this organized?
It's interesting because I'm in the middle of putting up a landing page for it as well, because I want people to sort of like see and meet it. I will obviously like post these things on my Instagram at one point, which is Januska Dawood, and so just keep an eye on that, and then I'll post a link of the landing page, and hopefully like people can multiply it and bring it into the world so that we can solve all these world pressing issues all together.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you
for making time. Thank you, Pete, if you watch this, for introducing
Thanks,
us.
Pete.
And it's been super inspiring.
Likewise.
Like there's so many things in my mind right now. Okay, I want to start a tribe. I want to do so many things. Please like the video. Please share it. Please leave comments. We're very happy to discuss with you what your thoughts are on removing ego, about teaching our children how to be more aware, how to have truly meaningful relationships. and we'll put all your things in the description.
For sure, yeah.
Again, for MP, leave a like here. Please subscribe to the channel here and leave your comments below. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are you happy? So I always get confused, like where did you watch?
Somewhere, like subscribe to the channel here. Yeah.